How's it going, everybody? Instant Suck SG back again with another Buddyfight video. Okay, so today in front of us we have a legend mode deck profile for you guys, and this is on the Star Deity Zodiac build. So Zodiac is a control deck, a very control deck because of his unique ability Gravity Rest, which will allow you to rest one of your opponent's monsters when he or she calls them to the field by any means, be it like superior call or normal call or whatever. So this is a really good control deck because it's generally a control deck that deals with a lot of the meta. So example, if your opponent calls like Butts or Atora, you can just pay the cost of the Gravity Rest and just rest them. And Gravity Rest cost usually is 1 gauge and discarding a card from your hand, which this deck is structured to play around with the discarding factor. And today I'm back to using my old tripod because my new one kinda like I'm in a different place to record now, so the new tripod is kind of like sorting lah. It's too big, that's what she said. And yep, let's start off with our buddy. So our buddy, we have Meteor Arms Dragsola because Dragsola is one of the most amazing cards out there for Neo Dragon Zwei or for this deck. So what this card does is when you call it by any means, you can call up to one size 3 Neo Dragon or Star monster from a drop zone by paying its call cost, which for Zodiac's case it's usually 2 gauge, and put this card into the soul of the monster. So that's one of the good abilities, but what is really amazing about this card is how it utilizes on more discarding abilities. So when your Neo Dragon with this card in its soul attacks, you may discard a card from your hand. If you do, draw a card. So you can discard some cards like Widow or Chaos Blade Joker, which I'll get to later on, and trigger their effects. And this card has cross nice, so yeah, although we don't usually use. And it being a 5/2/2 card, it's really solid if you somehow have no idea, like if you cannot like call out a Zodiac. And we have Kakeru Sensei. Okay, so that's it for our flag and buddy. Next, we run 4 copies, moving on to size 3s, we run 4 copies of Star Deity Dragon Zodiac. So this is one of the main cards of the deck because you know how monsters now have like really tanky centers. Decks have really tanky centers, like Wild Dragon, they have Sylvania, which is just like getting soul every single turn. And since we are playing Legend World, Zodiac being a dual world card has 2 different abilities. So one of it is with Gravity Rest, but what's interesting is his other effect states that if your flag is Legend World, this card gets Penetrate and all star monsters on your field gain plus power 3000. So all the monsters, meaning it himself also gets like the extra 3000, so it's a 10,000 penetrate for 2 damage. And note that we run quite a couple of star cards in this deck, so the fact that you can like continuously swing for like 10,000 with penetrate, and as well as other support monsters to get rid of your opponent cards, it's a pretty decent ability. And if your flag is Star Dragon World, this card gets move and all of the Neo Dragon on your field gets critical +1. So apart from that, it has Soul Guard and of course Gravity Rest, and it being a 7/2/5 card, it's really solid. It's both a Star and Neo Dragon, so this will trigger an ability for a card that is specifically made for Zodiac. I'll get to that later on. So that's 4 copies of Star Deity Dragon Zodiac. Now next we have 4 copies of so-called Zodiac's evolved form, Star Deity Combined Dragon Zodiac ES or S. And of course it has Gravity Rest, Move, and Soul Guard. And this doesn't have the Penetrate gaining ability or the gaining crit ability, but instead it has this is more controlling than the other, because when this card attacks, choose a size 2 or less monster on your opponent's field, and it cannot stand during his or her next stand phase. So this will really bind down a lot of the decks nowadays, such as Oni Assassins or even Thunder Empire, because they utilize heavily upon like size 2 or less monsters, which is why this card is amazing. And it has same stats as the previous Zodiac at 7/2/5, and again it's a Star and Neo Dragon. So that's it for size 3s. Next we have 4 more copies of our beloved buddies Dragsola. You might be wondering why I run Dragsola as my buddy. Is because I hate Antimatter Cloud. If you guys do not know what Antimatter Cloud is, it's basically this like Star Dragon World spell card that will nullify a call of a size 3 monster. So If I call it out through Drexola's effect, my opponent can't use Antimatter Cloud, and I really like his art. So just 4 copies of Drexola, that's it for our size 2s. Now moving on to size 1, we only have 3 copies of Leo Star Sentinel Leone. So this card is amazing because this will really give you the gauge advantage that you need to trigger Gravity Rest, as well as other effects like maybe Cross-Nicing. And although it doesn't have really good stats, right, but it's a 4K, so if you combo it with Star Deity Dragon Zodiac's ability and let it gain an extra 3000, this will be a 7000 beater, which will really screw up Atora if your opponent doesn't have like Crystal Spikes or the Candy Dragon on, which is amazing. You can just like swing for the extra attack. And also this will become a size 0 if you have if your buddy monster is a star, and of course it's a size 0, so it fits perfectly into a Zodiac deck since it's a size 3 and all. And it has a counter effect, which is the main reason why I play Leone, because it helps with your gauge, as I mentioned earlier on. Because just by discarding this card from your field, right, you can just gain an extra 2 gauge, which is just amazing. And it has no cost to call, mind you, so yeah. Next, for size 0s, this deck also emphasizes heavily on size 0 because that's where most of the support cards are, such as this Meteor Arms Nebulosa. So Nebulosa is specifically made for Zodiac because if it's in the soul of a Zodiac monster, it gets double attack. And yeah, call costs are 1 gauge, so you require gauge to call. But something interesting about the Zodiacs is that the call cost is pay 2 gauge and put 1 card from your drop zone into this card's soul. So during your first turn, right, you can charge like Nebulosa or Drexola away and like pay 2 gauge and call. And within those 2 gauge, you can choose the card that you charged in, which either can be Nebulosa or Drexola. So yeah, and again, this has Cross-Knife, so it being a size 0, you can just like pay 1 gauge and just slot it into your Zodiac Soul. And I ran 4 copies of it. Amazing card. Again, it's a star card, so if in desperate situations, you can just call this out and let it be a 6k beater, provided if you have Star Deity Dragon on your field. Alright, next we have 4 copies of probably one of the most iconic and staple cards in a Zodiac deck, Valkyrie All-Knowing Albedo. So this first effect is like pretty much redundant in Zodiac deck because we don't run great spells. But the main reason why you play Albedo is because of the second effect. When this card is discarded from your hand, again from the cost of maybe like Gravity Rest or some other effect, you can put a top card of your deck into your gauge and draw a card. So basically it's a free charge and draw, which will like render the cost of your Gravity Rest for free, since it's like discard 1 card from your hand and pay a gauge. So that's Albedo for you guys. Next we have 4 copies of Chaos Blade Joker. So Chaos Blade Joker is pretty much a staple card in like Demon Lord decks or Asgard deck because and in this case Zodiac, because of how amazing it is. Although it has a very heavy call cost of 3 gauge, but its unique ability allows it to be called from your drop zone if it's discarded from your hand, for the cost of like 1 life, which is pretty much like meh for decks nowadays. You can pay this again, pay 1 life. If this card is discarded from your hand, you can call this from your drop zone without paying its call cost, which is amazing because it's a 5/2/2 card, so you can swing it for like pretty high numbers for link attacks. And when this card enters the field for this turn, a monster on your field gets critical +1, so you can either add it to other monsters such as maybe Star Deity Dragon for the penetrate 3 crit, or you can add it to himself, so you can have like a double attacking Zodiac with Nebulosa in his soul to clear off a monster in the center, and you swing for a 3 crit, provided if your opponent's monster in the center has like some penetrate nullifying ability. Okay, next for size 0s, we have 2 copies of Capricorn Star Sentinel Capricornio. So it's a 1/1/2 card, although not very good, not very high stat, but it's still an amazing card because of his effect Star Senior. For the cost of calling it at 1 gauge, you can activate Star Senior, which when this card enters the field, you may call a size 2 or less star monster from your drop zone by paying its call cost. So this, we mainly call like, I mainly use it to call Drexola out, but sometimes if I have my perfect setup already, which is like Drexola, Nebulosa in the soul of like Star Sentinel, Star Deity Dragon or ES, I will just use it to call out Leone if I have to. Leone, right? I can't pronounce his name. Yeah, Leone. Or if I want to, I can call another Nebulosa and just like swing it into the soul. So again, Star Sinner only activates once per turn, but it's another big stick for you, I guess. Alright, so next we have probably one of the staple cards in Legend mode decks, except for Star maybe. Loki the Airgeist. So this card goes way back, and this is the reprint version because I'm a poor boy. It's a 0 crit monster with 3/5 stat, which is just really high for a size 0 that has 0 call cost. But when this card enters the field, you may put all souls from a card on the field into the owner's drop zone. So this can clear out Atora's soul, provided if the Atora doesn't have like mystery setting. But even if the Atora has mystery setting in its soul, right, you can clear out everything except that mystery setting spell card. So again, this is one of the ways you can get rid of souls, and Death Count Requiem is coming, so provided Requiem doesn't have like some soul gaining ability, right, you can just like call Loki and screw around with them. Alright, so next, for the last of our monsters, we have 2 copies of Ares Star Sentinel Ares. So it's a 2/1/1 card with 0 call cost, but we don't use it to call out. We don't call it out usually, because when this card is discarded from your hand, again through like Gravity Rest or some other effect, you may pay 1 gauge. If you do, destroy an item or spell on your opponent's field. So this card has cleared out Crystal Spikes for me countless of times. Like I run 2 copies of this specifically because I hate Crystal Spikes. So yeah, again, you can, it's a spell destroying card as well, so this can be used for like the set spells for Executioners or Divine Guardians, or even the Oni Assassin one. Alright, moving on to spells, we have 4 copies of Future Astrology. So earlier on I mentioned something about having a card that's made specifically for Zodiac, and this is it because it's a dual effect card, meaning that it has 2 effects. So choose and use one of the following 2. You may only cast Future Astrology once per turn. Pay 1 gauge if you do, and if there is a star on your field, you draw a card. And if there is a Neo Dragon on the field, you draw a card. So if you have a Zodiac out, which is both a star and Neo Dragon, you can draw 2 cards. And I have the alternate arts here. And of course, counter your flag is regarded as Legend World or Star Dragon World. You can use it to like trigger Zodiac, Star Deity Dragon Zodiac's move ability if your flag is like Star Dragon World, and just move away from like maybe a Baal Soleil or any penetrating monsters, because one of the biggest weakness for this deck is penetrate. So that's Future Astrology for you guys, 4 copies. Next, we run 4 copies of Divine Guidance. So this is a negate specifically made for Zodiac. If you have a Zodiac on your field, you may cast this card during your opponent's attack, nullify the attack, and put the top card of your deck into the gauge. You gain 1 life. So it's like a blue and green dragon shield together. Next, we run 3 copies of Darkness Rune. So this is a triple effect card, but a cost of 1 life. Counter, choose one of the following 3 and use it. Either put the top 2 cards of your deck into your gauge, which again helps with the gauge problem that this deck might have. Put a soul from a card on your opponent's field into his or her drop zone, which can be used for Athara. And destroy a size 1 or less monster on your opponent's field. So that's 3 effects in 1 card right there. Really good card, and that's Darkness Rune for you guys. Next, we have 2 copies of this special promo card, but it's also another version for Uninvited Deity Inspector. So you can either have like 2 or like 4 of this, but I only run 2 copies of this card because for the cost of 2 life, you search your deck for 1 monster with Zodiac in its card name and call it by paying its call cost. So 2 life is actually really heavy now, so I believe 2 copies is just nice for me, because this deck doesn't really listen to me and I have trouble getting Zodiac out. Yeah, that's the life of me. Alright, so next, for the last card in this deck, we have 4 items, which is Gaimia's Staff. So equip cost of 1 gauge and 1 life, pretty heavy for a 0/0 card, but this card generates so much advantage for you that it's insane. You may tap this card. If you do, put a top card of your deck into your gauge, so that's a free gauge for you guys. That covers the gauge cost. And you may discard a card from your hand. If you do, draw a card. You may only use this ability once per turn. So this, you can trigger Albedo's effect, Ares' effect, Chaos Blade Joker's effect, and many more if you decide to run other cards. But that's Gaimir stuff for you guys. Our generator, advantage generator. So you might be wondering why I don't run some cards like Holo Arm Zodiac, North Seas Guard. This is like my sideboard, so yeah. And this card, very important card, Illusion of Void Deity. Although it's important, but I don't really run it in my main board. Call me dumb, call me stupid, I don't care, but I just can't find the space to play it. And also, I tried to play Symbol Guard and Brayton Guard, but I decided that these cards are not really like worth playing in a Zodiac deck. So I haven't really figured out my sideboard yet, but so far it's only like these cards, like 5 of these. I might consider like adding cards, maybe just to screw with my opponent, maybe some generic set spells, who knows. But until then, this has been my Zodiac deck. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, although it's fairly long. But yeah, this has been my Zodiac deck, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.